Welcome to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installment of a different series every show. It is Friday, April 24th, the day in history when Paul McCartney had to come out and publicly state that he was still alive in 1969. Now, I know probably a lot of our listeners aren't thinking about that time period in their lives because that's like the moon landing and stuff. But it's crazy to think that an album cover could have elicited such a
Just
response
without
from
the
audience.
shoes. Yeah.
It's also the time of year again where there's a lot of shows coming to an end. You've got The Comeback, you've got Smiling Friends, you've got The Boys. Problem is, we've reviewed a lot of those shows, or we'll be reviewing them soon. With The Comeback, we'll do the finale for that. And so we need to separate ourselves from all the other podcast reviews shows that like to do only pilots and throw in there a random show that has been on forever. And that's what we've done here. And it is truly like very random because I have never seen an episode of NCIS before in my life. This is my introduction into the NCIS world. So everything I've learned in the last like couple days. I didn't know that NCIS stood for Naval Criminal Investigative Service, which makes it sound like they should all be with like flip-flops. And in fact, I'm pretty sure like the New Orleans one, they probably are in flip-flops for that one. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the costumes are a bit different.
Yeah.
I didn't know that this one has Gary Cole in it. Gary Cole from everything but Veep and Chuck. And
Harvey Birdman, attorney at law, the titular character.
Wilmer Valderrama is usually in the episodes.
Fez.
He's not in this one, but he was in the trailer that I saw for it. I didn't know that it was a spinoff of JAG. JAG stood for Judge Advocate General.
That was 2003. Yep.
Okay. And I didn't also know that it actually, what I do know about that is they had the backdoor pilot for NCIS in JAG, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a couple of the characters from the first NCIS round were in the end of that section. Cool.
That's why so many people like Mark Hammond were there and stuff.
Mark Harmon.
Harmon, yeah.
Yes. I didn't know that there have been seven spinoffs.
About to be 8.
About to be 8 in New York, just like Walking Dead, Dead City.
Yeah.
And then I didn't know that it is one of the longest running scripted TV shows ever. It makes sense. Obviously, it's not going to beat out Law and Order, but it's run for 23 seasons. Here we are looking at episode 17. And if you look at when it premiered on CBS, September of 2003, trying to place that time, if we were doing the podcast back then, our voices would have been a lot higher. That's for one.
I would have been 4 years old.
Okay, well, you're dating yourself right now. But yeah, so Bush was meeting Putin at Camp David. So it's crazy how Putin was still leading Russia at that point. And then also Iran apparently was stating that it would not give up its nuclear program, including uranium enrichment.
Now, you said that was 2003, right?
One of the title, subjects of those papers back then, when I looked up like articles and things that were going on. Crazy how history just recycles and repeats itself. All I knew going in from this is that it's a crime show. Were you different? Did you know what NCIS was about?
I hadn't seen an episode either. The only thing that I was kind of familiar with was that I remember my mom a couple years ago was a big fan of CSI. And when I walked out, because I didn't know what she was watching, I asked her what it was, and she said NCSI, and the N stands for Navy. She thought that it was just a complete spinoff of CSI, but no.
Which would make sense.
Now with Blue Bloods and SWAT and the late show with Stephen Colbert, and they're all ending. This is the last scripted show under Les Moonves to continue in production, but also, despite it being in its 23rd season, it remains one of the top 5 most watched shows on network TV.
And it's also the 5th longest running, so it's the 5-5. It's got the double 5s.
Yeah. And then with 8.86 million viewers and continues to be one of the top performing Paramount Plus shows. I think Tracker is like one of the few shows that's beating it.
I'll tell you the real reason why I thought this episode would be so great to tune in on. It's called Reboot. And I don't know anything about NCIS, but I do know about reboots. We cover so many of them on the podcast. I assumed that we would be in for a treat where they would bring back a lot of the original cast, like the ones that are still alive. Obviously not Vance, because they make a big deal about the fact that Vance died recently in the show.
Well, he actually died. Yeah, it's important to bring that up. In the 500th episode, they're on episode 504. So he died like literally 4 weeks ago.
Right, because I would have, that makes a lot of sense. He was probably one of the last remaining first season guys. I think that Jimmy is like the next oldest one there.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the show, Leon Vance, I think started in 2008,
Right.
and then Rocky Carroll, yeah, left after 18 years of playing him. But yeah, also what you were
So I
saying.
thought they were bringing back the OG players. I thought it'd be the perfect episode to jump in, tune in, and find out, join the fandom, you know? And then LL Cool J showed up, and I was like, yeah, he's one of the OGs, right? Look it up. No, he isn't. He is not, but he feels like one of them because he's been on the show intermittently throughout the
Oh,
years.
yeah,
But he definitely looks like the dude that you would see. And I think I'm just confusing him with the SWAT guy, which is funny because he's definitely not as built as that dude is. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's got the full vibe of being a cop.
this episode was, some article said that it was a return for him, but like you said, it never really feels like he left the universe because it is true, 2009 to 2023, he was in NCIS Los Angeles, but then he went to NCIS Hawaii for season 3, 2023 to 2024, and then he even guest starred on NCIS last year in a different episode. And you weren't wrong to think that they bring back people all the time. Even Mark Harmon was brought back for NCIS Origins last year when he left in 2021.
The Hawaii shows, it's cool though, because you know that they film on location for most of them.
Mhm.
Like with Hawaii Five-0, Scott Kahn, he's going to be in the NCIS. He's crossing worlds, not crossing characters in the spinoff with LL Cool J in the New York one.
And Sam Hanna, the character that LL Cool J plays, even I think was in a crossover of Hawaii Five-0 back in like 2012.
Playing Sam Hanna?
Yeah, like I think that they
I didn't
did a
know those
crossover
worlds.
event.
I didn't know those worlds converge. So how are they going to even explain Scott Cahn's thing?
Well, you just said Scott Cotton. He's probably not
Kahn.
going to be playing the same character.
Yeah, I literally spell his name in my head, so I see the double A, and I always just go from can to con. You want to hear my cans and cons? So what I'm getting from that is that Scott Kahn might actually be coming over with his Hawaii Five-0 character. I mean, if Sam has gone over to the Hawaii world for Hawaii Five-0, you might consider that, yeah, that character might also be.
They don't have his name listed on Wikipedia yet as to what character he's going
So
to
it's kind of
play.
hard to tell. We
Yeah.
don't know. The thing I'll say about LL Cool J is like Ice-T or I don't know, Cedric the Entertainer. Happy birthday to him as well. Like they get pulled into these kind of like corny type of wide stream audience things when they have like a completely different career, and
Yeah.
then they just have a field day with it.
It's usually later on in their career.
Right.
But
And
yeah.
but LL Cool J particularly, he's kind of like Rosario Dawson was in the Marvel universe, at least when it was on Netflix.
Connects all of them.
Yes, pops in there everywhere. He could kind of be the Stan Lee in the same regard. Maybe he's a watcher. Uh, so when I was watching it, I didn't get a chance to see Mark Harmon, Paulie Perrette, who was the lady with the pigtails, who I know worked the tech thing because she'd always be in the ads for the
Right.
show. Mr. Bull, Michael Weatherly, who's run into some issues, I know, in his career.
He's currently right now in the separate NCIS spinoff, NCIS
Really?
Tony and Ziva.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mr. Bull wasn't there, and then you said Rocky Carroll had already passed away in the show.
In the show, yeah.
And then there was like a super old dude too. I think used to be part of the autopsy thing, and he passed away. I think around COVID times. But suffice to say, I was too overconfident because this reboot didn't have those guys, and it was much more of a bottleneck episode.
So when you saw, yeah, you kind of said, but when you saw LL Cool J, you were like, oh, okay, here's the first one of many, and then it just ended up being him.
Sort of, yeah. There had already been sort of indicators that this was going to be confined to the setting of The Office. You know,
Yeah.
It was like a late night situation that's going on, but it also turned out to be a one of two parters.
Yes.
And half of the cast, the regulars, weren't even present, which meant, in a good way, that we can really hone in on the characters we do meet. There's Kasie, there's Parker. Parker, I think, has replaced Vance as being the main guy, Gary Cole's character. Jimmy, who's, again, the longest tenured guy, but he's very nervous with his life, and that's why Sam
he's
kind
the
of
main
gets
character.
him out of his... What?
I feel like he's the main character of this episode. It's really his episode.
Of this episode. I
Yeah.
was like, you tell me that this...
No, not
this is
not,
the
not
Noah
of the
Wiley of
actual
the show or
series.
something like that. Yeah, because he's reduced to wearing a like workout vest the entire time. That's just a weighted vest because he's wanting to then climb Kilimanjaro, but he doesn't want to tell anybody about it. This is the most like main like. It's not going to offend anybody
Right.
by telling anybody that, and he's still nervous about it. Then you've got Sam, of course, Tom, the janitor, and then you've got a group of tech whizzes, Daryl, Felix, Nadine, Harold / Frank, he has two names, and then Bradley Cooper. the spider.
I love Bradley Cooper, the Spider. No, Daryl Greco was interesting because the afro was just so familiar to me, and I clocked him right away. He was from Drake and Josh, where he played a similar, like a very nerdy character.
Wow, as a kid.
Yes, as a kid, and I thought his name was Clayton in Drake and Josh. I thought that Clayton was like a recurring character. Turns out he was only in 2 episodes of the series.
He
So, but
looks
I remembered one of the episodes.
right. You were a big
So
fan of Drake and Josh, and also what was it, Sweet Life of Zach and Cody?
yes, right.
Like one of the Sprouse brothers was recently attacked with a
Dylan
robber or
Sprouse,
something like
I
that.
think, yeah.
That's crazy. The picture that you just showed me of Dylan
Yeah.
from the show looks a little bit like a live action version of one of the Clone High characters. Like if they were to do that nowadays. All right. So all my notes about reboots and Malcolm in the Middles had to
Yeah.
go out the window. And instead we have the plot of a skeleton crew of night owl tech nerds. They are called trolls, which is a little mean, but trolls are conducting a system update. That's why it's called a reboot.
Yeah.
And
When you figured that out, I think that was probably the moment where you
And
were
it's
just
going to
like, "It's
take
done."
2 hours, and it's going to cause a lockdown at the agency for the database, and I guess all the databases to reboot and make sure that their security is a little bit better than it had been.
We do get that the main crew is out in Philly right now at a conference,
They're at a
so they
conference,
did
which reminded me a little bit of the show Smoke, because I think the guy who caused all those arson things, the John Orr guy or something like that, I believe that was his name. I'm not
Yeah.
sure, but like that he would wait till he would go to all these firefighting conferences, and then he would set fires around because he really wanted to freak people out.
I remember you saying that. I actually liked that the episode took place all in one night. I thought that that was an
Well, it would
interesting
have
way to
to,
go about
yes,
it. Yeah, instead of them tracking like just a serial killer for days, I
right.
was like, I'm glad with kind of the horror aspect they're going with a little bit.
For the first part, because
Yes,
again, we're gonna get a second one
right.
where
Yeah,
they
the second part later.
expand more, and Wilmer Valderrama shows up. So yeah, the trolls, the tech trolls, things are supposed to go pretty smoothly for them. Kasie is the one who's in charge of all the update completely. So she's the task manager, and everybody's got their Zoom on for different rooms. Gary Cole has brought the donuts. Uh, what's his name? And Parker has brought the donuts,
Yeah.
and then suddenly
Alden
the
Parker.
update starts, and yes, Daryl shows up dead. Like they can't contact him. They find him and he's been strangled. However, they don't know he's strangled at first. Jimmy has to take him down to the morgue to figure that out. Apparently, he can't just look at the body. They're treating this very seriously. Parker and Jimmy are the ones to find him. And then what ends up happening is Sam shows up. Sam, again, he introduces himself like he's been there in the show forever. So I fully expected to find out that he was a long-term character.
He's saying he's in a layover.
He's very tired.
And he's going to Dubai, I believe, right?
Right. He's in the middle of an operation and he just wanted to sleep in Ducky's room. I think Ducky is the guy, I might be wrong, but he was the guy who passed away from COVID, and that they're just still using his name. I don't know what's going on with that, but maybe just Ducky's old office. I still refer to my neighbor's home as that old neighbor's home, even though a new family has moved in. It's just one of those things that you do. So he's sleeping in Ducky's office. He wakes up, he comes downstairs, he figures out that this body has been found, and everybody's suspicion turns towards the tech bros.
Yeah.
And also Nadine, who's also a tech bro, but she's got her own. She's the one with the spider.
I
She's
love
with the
Bradley Cooper.
You
Best
said
joke
that.
out of the whole entire show, yeah.
Yeah. So they go about their interrogation in an interesting way. They decide not to tell anybody about the fact that Daryl has been found dead. And so they find out that the remaining 3 tech people, they all have their idiosyncrasies, but ultimately they aren't killers.
Right.
That's I'm zooming through 15 minutes of them just going back and forth, finding out
The-
that one
the
of them
main
lied
one-
on their
yeah.
resume, and then the other one is super egotistical, but at the same time, none of them have that killer instinct. At the same time, you've learned that there's a janitor in the office who does seem to have a lot of red flags, but no one, because he's worked there for so long, seems to be looking at him too harshly. His name is Tom.
Yeah.
And he's pointing suspicion everywhere else but himself. He's pointing them at the tech bros, saying, oh man, they sounded suspicious. I heard them fighting. He's also pointing at Vito, who's a guy who he told to leave. I think he's another janitor or some other worker security staff that would have seen him. At the end of the episode, it's revealed with no big surprise that Tom is, in fact, the person who killed Daryl. However, why he killed Daryl becomes more interesting. He just wants to be able to infiltrate this update, this reboot, by sticking a flash drive into the main computer and being able to mess with the files. Why does
That's
he
not
want to do that?
necessarily, yeah, it's not necessarily his plan.
Why does he want to do that? Because he's being blackmailed. His family has been held captive, and it goes back to the first season, or first season, which I then had to go watch. No, the first scene of the show, which showed a plumber. It was like a
Yeah,
commercial
a
for
plumber
plumbing.
that was like fixing a sink, and then he walks out and he sees that family has been
The
tied
same
up.
woman who had like let him in was now, tied up with her kids and being threatened at gunpoint. I don't see why we technically need that first scene, because when later on the SWAT team comes in and saves everybody, and Tom had already said, my family's being held up at gunpoint and they could die if I don't do this. You know what's happening. If you're going to show us both them getting kidnapped and then also the reunion to which we've never seen Tom interact with these people before. It just felt like that first scene of 3 minutes was there to grab the audience's attention, but it didn't come back into play. It wasn't necessary.
I see what you're saying, but the thing about NCIS is that it's criminal. It always starts off with a death or something. So what would you want the first scene to be?
If the
Like,
scene, I mean, they would have needed to just start at the update, the reboot, and I think they realized that that's pretty boring. But this first part of it was so needless. Why did they need a plumber there? Why couldn't his family have just been kidnapped? Like you understand
it
how
wa
like the
yeah,
plumber
right.
makes absolutely no
That was
sense.
just supposed to be for shock value, and he
Yeah,
walks out, and then suddenly you see, like,
right.
the
It was
kids.
only there for the presentation of that one moment, and it probably didn't help the kidnappers much. So yeah, they saved the day, but then Kasie finds out that her files had been looked into, or that the database's files had been infringed upon. Or bad word for it. So they see that there's a file called Edna, and it's completely empty now, and the bad guys have deleted it and assume that there's no such thing as a backup, like a hard copy backup, or a hard drive backup of the previous system. They just assume if it's blanked, it's blanked.
Yeah, right.
And we're also jumping over the fact that during the reboot, this is such an old device that they were using. The computers are so old that like one of the fans busted, and so they went back and they got one from like the 80s and they attached it in there. The tech logic in this show is quite bad.
It's not Mr. Robot, you know?
Yeah, it's the opposite of Mr. Robot. So it feels like it's obviously built towards a certain crowd,
Right.
but it feels so fake. They're throwing out terms hoping that will, like, ISO, you're in charge of ISO, you're in charge of caches, you're the PowerShell dude, processing cores, and MD5, and then like a bunch of lights going on and off. But no fan from the 80s, the 90s, even the early 2000s is going to take a modern computer, anything
Right.
running as it, and still work on it or make that much of a difference if it was attached to it. Like that's the part that like got me a little bit confused. But moving aside from that, overall, it's about as laid back an investigation that I've ever seen in my life. Again, no explosions. No one seems super bothered by the fact that there's a dead guy in the office, and that's a credit to the team for
Right.
keeping their
Yeah.
cool. But
Even
that's about as LL Cool J as you can make it.
Harold, yeah, is probably the most scared throughout the whole entire thing, and that's just because he's afraid that people are gonna figure out that he lied. I do like, because I did learn that this is the only episode in the whole series that doesn't feature Sean Murray, Wilmer Valderrama, and Katrina Loss since their
Yes.
debuts, and I thought that as just a random episode that we watched, that really helped because we focused on the two
If
biggest
we had like
names.
15 other names in there, then it would not
Right.
be as easy to keep track of what was
But
going on.
Gary Oldman and LL Cool J, yeah, they're the biggest names of the show. So the fact that they were the ones that were really heading the investigation, even though Jimmy has this whole thing where he conquers his fear,
Yes.
it was nice that we followed
And
them.
Kasie had her whole thing where she was taking charge of this entire, like, it's too bad that things went bad for her, but that was her whole narrative at the beginning, was she didn't want anybody around to take credit for the fact that she is now taken over as the tech lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that it was nice foreshadowing as well, because with the NCIS New York, there's a line that LL Cool J says where he mentions how he's trying to make a move, which is obviously supposed to be kind of a setup for the New York show.
It's not like, hey, give me that 99-cent pizza.
I was also definitely not. I was glad that Tommy wasn't just an evil janitor. They actually did go through, even though I know you said you didn't like the first scene, they did give you a reason as to why he was doing what he was doing. I thought that was nice as well.
But he he explains why he did it later on.
No, I understand.
When he's
That's
holding an axe to the man's throat and he's saying, "Don't shoot." I don't think anybody actually had a gun on him, did they, back then? Or maybe they
no,
did.
they did. Both of them did. But
It was dark.
when it comes to the like kind of cons for the show, every single thing was predictable, and I think that a lot of the dialogue, this I think you say for a lot of shows or a lot of these episodes, very simplistic.
There's not a lot of shows out there. I know network shows it's different, where you're still getting like 20 some episodes each season.
Right. Yeah.
Here you do.
And I think it's
because
exactly
of that,
20 episodes. Yeah.
because of that, you're getting a lot of characters who are doing the same thing year in and year out, where you can take off full seasons and you're not going to miss all that much. I mean, it's insane, again, that Jimmy, who's been around since season 1, his most interesting attribute is the fact that he wants to climb Kilimanjaro at some point when he feels like he's physically fit enough to do so.
Well, I know that
Like, that's the character that you've been following for 23 years. In comparison, if you look at the Lost characters and the journeys they made in like 5 years, they went from like, I don't know, a corrupt con man who kills people to like accepting that he's in an afterlife world. Like,
yeah. That's
crazy.
getting into spoiler territory. But Jimmy, yeah, he's been on the show since 2004. Definitely his biggest role. But what you were saying about characters leaving for years and coming back, Code De Paulo, who plays Ziva David,
that doesn't feel like that's the right pronunciation of that name.
She returned in her recurring role in 2019 after leaving in 2013. So that happens, like you were saying, kind of all the time. I also did you feel like Sam's entrance was a little forced? Like when they actually introduced him?
It felt like it deserved a round of applause. Like I was watching an old Happy Days episode and he waited for like people to, or like an SNL clip, where like the star comes in and everybody claps and they're like, "Yep, this is his first scene back."
I mean, like to me, it just didn't feel like it was.
If you approach this show being like, this is a true crime, like super scary thing, you're not going to get that from this. I will say that Jimmy reminded me a lot of like a timid Matthew McFadden character. Is that his name? Yeah.
From Succession,
from the last show that we just did. And then so overall, what would you give it?
I would give it, I think, like a 6 out of 10. But
I would say 4 out of 10.
You would give it even lower.
Because 5 out of 10 has always been my bar for these network shows. And you just like, if you're just a normal network show, you're going to get that. This had a little bit less because it's a bottleneck. So 4 out of 10, probably wouldn't recommend it. I'm not saying I'll never check out another NCIS in my life, but it was a fun little ride while we had it.
A big problem that seems like most people had with this episode and kind of the preceding episodes after episode 500 is that the group, they're not giving a lot of time to grieve Leon Vance, not like a real grief session. I know that they bring him up a couple times this episode.
That's replayability though, because in the future when these are out of order, it would be long in tooth if like every once in a while you were just seeing like everybody solemn for a full episode and there was no actual death in that episode. You'd just be like, I don't understand that. So I think this is all about when it goes into syndication and they play them out of order.
That probably makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I don't know. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.